أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity to continue with our lesson in Bulughul Maram, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this majlis and make this gathering a reason where our sins are forgiven, a reason where our prayers are answered, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and with His protection from all difficulties, trials and tribulations in dunya and akhirah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with iman and taqwa, and bless us with husnul khatimah, and open for us doors of understanding, and may Allah make us among those who are close to Him. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. In our last lesson, we were in the chapter of Al-Ghusl. That is a chapter of bathing. And we are still in the big chapter of Tahara in this particular book of Bulughul Maram. And we spoke about a few types of bathing in Islam. There are certain types of bathing which is wajib, and there are certain type of bathing which is sunnah, and there are bathing that is mubah. The bathing that is wajib, there are of 6 types. Number 1, when there is the ejaculation of sperm, khurujul mani. When there is an ejaculation of sperm, it is compulsory upon the male and the female to perform the janaba bath, or we say the obligatory bath. Whether it comes from the male or it comes from the female, because ejaculation of sperm can come from the male, and likewise it comes from the female. So when there is an ejaculation, then it is compulsory upon them to perform the obligatory bath. This is point number 1. Number 2, when there is a sexual intercourse, where the head of the penis is inserted into the vagina, then it is compulsory upon the male and the female, or the husband and the wife, both of them, to perform the obligatory bath, even though there is no ejaculation, but there is a penetration. Just by penetration, bathing becomes compulsory. This is point number 2. Number 3 is pertaining to the woman in menses. After the cycle of the menses is over, then it is compulsory upon her to perform the obligatory bath. Number 4 is the after we have number 3 menses. Number 4 is postnatal bleeding. When a woman gives birth to a child, after the postnatal bleeding, usually it takes about 40 days, then it is compulsory upon her to bathe the obligatory bath. Number 5 is giving birth. There are some women, when they give birth, there is no postnatal bleeding, but yet it is compulsory upon her to perform the obligatory bath, because just by giving birth itself is a reason where the obligatory bath becomes compulsory. So this is point number 5. And number 6 is pertaining to bathing of the deceased when a person passes away. It is fardu kifaya upon the Muslims and in the community to bathe any deceased, dead person. So altogether, how many bathing that are compulsory in Islam? Altogether we have how many? We have 6. So we try our best to memorize. If you memorize this, it becomes easy. Anyone who asks you about the janaba bath or obligatory bath, you can answer them easily because you have memorized. So there are 6, and this can be found in Safinatul Najah. The book in Safinatul Najah, the author speaks about the 6 things. And then we have bathing that is sunnah. And in our last lesson, we are speaking about the sunnah bath actually. Because we spoke about the obligatory bath before. When it comes to the sunnah bath, there are many types of sunnah bath. It is not like any the wajib. Wajib you have only 6. But the sunnah bath, Al-Imam Al-Bayjuri, to give you a picture, Al-Imam Al-Bayjuri, and he mentioned in his book, Al-Hashiyah ala Ibn Qasim, there are about 80 plus, if I can remember, it's about 80, 84, 86, and he mentioned 84 or 86 types of sunnah bath. There are many in Islam. For example, you have the sunnah bath when entering Makkah. Before you enter Makkah, before you enter into the Kaaba, you need to perform the tawaf and so on. It is a sunnah, you need to bathe. Even if you are in ihram. If you ask how can I bathe when I'm in ihram, you can bathe in ihram, no problem. But just avoid using soap. You bathe just by using water. It is a sunnah. Before you enter into Masjid al-Haram, it is a sunnah for you to take a bath. Before you enter into Masjid Nabawi to ziyarah the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is a sunnah for you to bathe before you go. Some people they thought that just by reaching Medina, the first thing I should do is straight go to the maqam of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is not the case. Before we visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we must understand there are certain etiquettes. And one of the etiquette before visiting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is very important because some people they thought just by reaching Medina straight away they go to the maqam, and they are in a state of musafir or traveling, and they have not performed any bath or what you call it in that situation. But I thought that this is the first thing that they must do. What we have to understand is that before we visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are certain adab. Just like today when you want to visit the Prime Minister, or you want to visit the King, or you want to visit the most important person in the world, for example. You got an invitation from Fulan bin Fulan. The king of this particular country invited you to the palace. Just imagine, what will be your situation? Do you come to the king in a state that not bathing and wearing simple clothes? That will not be the case. What people will do is to make sure that they wear the best outfit and to smell the nicest perfume, to be in a state of cleanliness, tidiness, and all these things that the people of dunya knows. No need for me to explain any further, but that is the thing. If you want to meet the king or prime minister or someone special, you will dress up in a way which is clean and tidy and smell nice and so on and so forth. Likewise, when you visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most important person for us on the face of this earth, then and now, then it is important for us to understand that it is a sunnah that we perform the bath, the sunnah bath, before we enter into the masjid of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, it is a sunnah in Hajj, for example, before you throw the stones of the Jamrah. It is a sunnah for you to perform the bath. When you go to the mosque for Jummah, it is sunnah for you to bathe. So basically in Islam, any congregation where a lot of people gather in a particular place, then it is a sunnah for us to take a bath before going to that place. So it is about 80 plus, the sunnah bath. But Al-Imam Ibn Hajar, in his Bulughul Maram, after he spoke about the wajibat, the bathing that is wajib, when he speaks about the sunnah bath, he mentioned a few. He did not mention every sunnah bath, otherwise it becomes lengthy. He spoke about one particular bathing that is very important. It is a sunnah, but it is very important for a Muslim. That is Yawmul Jumu'ah. And we have many hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that speaks about the sunnah of bathing the Jumu'ah bath. Before you go to the Jumu'ah, before you go to the masjid, on Friday, it is a sunnah for us to take a bath. And the intention of that bathing is, I perform this bath to attend the Friday prayers. This is how we intend. We bathe to attend the Friday prayers for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There must be intention that you are bathing for the sake of attending Friday prayers, and you are doing this for Allah. Then it becomes ibadah. But if you wake up in the morning and you go to the toilet and you straight away bath without making any intention, and turn out that it is Friday, you don't get any rewards, because that is mubah. It becomes something that is mubah. Mubah meaning something that is permissible. You won't get any rewards. No rewards and no sin. This is the meaning of mubah. But the moment you make the intention for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are performing this bath to attend the Friday prayers, then only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the rewards, because now it becomes ibadah. So ibadah always comes with niyyah, intention. That is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, innamal a'malu bin niyyat, that all these are binded with intention. If you don't intend, you do not get any rewards. It becomes mubah. If you intend, it becomes a sunnah. Likewise, eating and drinking. Eating and drinking is mubah. You don't get any rewards for eating and drinking. But if you follow the sunnahs in eating and drinking by reciting the basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, before you eat, and before you drink, and you say the basmalah, and you make the intention that by the food that you consume, so that you are able to make ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you are able to get the strength, that by it you are able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your eating it becomes ibadah. So initially it is mubah. Eating and drinking it is mubah. But the moment you make intention for the sake of Allah, and for the sake of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and following the adab in eating and drinking, then the ibadah that is mubah now becomes a sunnah. Likewise pertaining to bathing, and pertaining to brushing our teeth. Islam taught us the importance of cleanliness. Before we come into the masjid, we make sure that we are clean, for example. And we are intending, because we are coming to the masjid to perform our prayers, then our cleanliness becomes ibadah. So that is why it is important in Islam to always understand this reality. How are we able to turn our daily routine and our daily acts from mubah to sunnah, so that we receive rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every second. We go out from our houses to our workplace. How are we able to make our efforts in going into the workplace as a form of ibadah? By making intention, good intention, by intending that we are going into the workplace to fulfill the obligation that Allah has given us. That is to provide nafaqah for our family, to provide nafaqah for our wife and children. Then if that is the case, then going into the workplace becomes an ibadah. But it comes in with knowledge. It comes in with understanding, because there are some Muslims and they thought that Islam is only about prayers, or Islam is only about fasting in the month of Ramadan. After Ramadan, there is no Islam, only 5 times daily prayers. Then when it comes to Hajj, Islam comes again. Some people really thought that Islam is only 5 things. No, Islam is not 5 things. These are the 5 pillars of Islam, yes, and these are the important acts of ibadah, no doubt. Prayers, fasting, zakah, Hajj. But it is not any complete Islam. There are many other things. Islam is a way of life. Islam speaks about mu'amala, your dealings, your workplace, your business, how you buy and sell, your neighbor, how you interact, your friends, your family members, your children, how you nurture them, and so on and so forth. So Islam is a complete way of life that the Prophet ﷺ has showed us. So it is incumbent upon us as a Muslim to make sure that our life, our daily life, is in accordance with the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So inshallah ta'ala, we constantly will receive any rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our good intentions, that everything we do is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless us with tawfiq and hidayah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. So now inshallah we continue with the hadith in Bulughul Maram. We have come into the hadith of Abu Sa'id. Al-Imam Ibn Hajar mentioned an Abi Sa'id radiyallahu anhu أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. And in this particular Sahabi narrates that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. Yani it means that bathing on Friday wajibun ala kulli muhtalim. Literally it means is wajib and compulsory upon muhtalim. Yani muhtalim here it means a person who has reached puberty. So literally this particular hadith it says that bathing Yawmul Jum'ah is wajib. But all the 4 Imams in the 4 madhab, the madhab Imam Shafi'i, madhab Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hanifa, all of the Imams in the madhab, they mentioned that bathing on Friday is sunnah and not wajib. What is the reason? Because there is another hadith. If you have the book Bulughul Maram in review, the next hadith that comes after this hadith, it speaks about bathing on Friday. The hadith of Samura bin Jundub radiyallahu anhu. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من توضأ يوم الجمعة فبها ونعمت ومن اغتسل فالغسل أفضل. Yani the next hadith the Prophet ﷺ he mentioned those who takes wudu on Jum'ah, then it is better for him. And then the Prophet mentioned وَمَنِ اغْتَسَلَ فَالْغُسْلُ أَفْضَلُ. But for those who bathe, bathing is better. So when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned bathing is better, here ulama he mentioned that it shows that bathing Yawmul Jum'ah is not wajib, but it is a sunnah. Because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to bathe is better. To bathe is better. Then what about the first hadith? where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned wajib ala kulli muhtalim. Ghuslul jumu'ati wajibun ala kulli muhtalim. The first hadith that he mentioned, bathing on Friday is wajib. The second hadith that he mentioned, bathing on Friday is better for you. So our scholars and he mentioned the word wajib can have a few meanings in the first hadith. One of the meaning of wajib is something that is emphasized, meaning due to the importance that it is highly emphasized in Islam to bathe on Friday. And the second hadith supports in the first hadith by the Prophet ﷺ, when he is saying that bathing on Yawmul Jum'ah is better. So that is why our scholars and he mentioned that bathing on Friday is a sunnah. And last time in our last lesson, I remember I spoke about when to bathe the Friday bath. When is the best to bathe the Friday bath? The scholars they mentioned the best time to bathe in the Friday bath is before you go out of your house to the masjid. That is the best. But for many of us who are working, who live in the morning, there is no issue if we make the intention before we go out from our houses in the morning. But what is important is that we must understand the way to intend, how to make the intention. That's what I mentioned earlier. The way to intend when bathing the Jumu'ah bath is, I bathe the Jumu'ah bath for the sake of attending the Friday prayers. To attend the Friday prayers. And this is how we intend. That my bathing is to attend the Friday prayers for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we make our intention in our hearts and when we are inside in the toilet. Because the reality of intention is fil qulub. It is the hearts. So we perform in this bath, and this is very important. That's what we mentioned. And likewise, it is a sunnah to remove the body hairs. The hairs from the armpits, the hairs from the private parts, to cut the fingernails, to trim the moustache, and so on and so forth. All these things it is a sunnah to do on Friday. So the best is to bathe before we go any of the house into the masjid. Or we bathe in the morning if you are going out to work. And the starting time of bathing the Jumu'ah bath is at the time of Fajr. And this is the thing also you must understand. Meaning if a person make the intention to bathe the Jumu'ah bath before Fajr, before Subuh, it's not valid. For example, if a person wake up at 3 a.m. and he goes to the toilet and he makes the intention to bathe and to attend the Friday prayers, it's not valid. Because the starting time of bathing is Fajr. So after Fajr, then it is permissible for a person to make any intention. So inshallah ta'ala, all of us we make intention every Friday. Do not forget to bathe the obligatory bath. And this carries a great rewards. One of the etiquettes of the sunnahs of Fridays is to perform the sunnah bath of Jumu'ah. And the Prophet ﷺ on all these hadiths that we are hearing emphasize on this particular act. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with tawfiq. The first hadith is narrated by As-Sab'a. And Imam Ibn Hajar and he mentioned akhrajahu As-Sab'a. This is a terminology of Imam Ibn Hajar. He said 7 Imams narrated this hadith. Who are the 7 Imams? Al-Imam Ibn Hajar, and he came out and he gave the term 7. Akhrajahu Sab'a, Akhrajahu Al-Khamsa. That is the thing about this author. Sometimes he say Akhrajahu Al-Arba'. Yani the narrators are 4 Imams. Sometimes he say 5 Imams. Sometimes he say 7 Imams. Yani who are the 7 Imams? Hopefully we can remember, inshallah. Number 1, Al-Imam Bukhari. Then we have Imam Muslim, Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Abu Dawud, Imam Nasai, Ibn Majah, and Ahmad. So these are the 7 Imams. So these 7 Imams are indicated in this, the first hadith. The second hadith, and he said, Rawahul Khamsa. And when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Fal-Ghuslu Afdal, bathing is better for you. He said, Akhrajahu Khamsa, 5 Imams. So when he said 5 Imams, you take out 2. The 2 you take out is Bukhari and Muslim. So if you take out Bukhari and Muslim, who do you get? Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, Nasai, Ahmad. These are the 5 Imams. Rawahu al-Khamsa wa hassanahu Tirmidhi. Hassanahu at-Tirmidhi. Yani al-Imam al-Tirmidhi says that this particular hadith is Hasan. Now this is a terminology in Mustalah Hadith. For those who study Mustalah Hadith, the scholars of Hadith divided the Hadith into 3 categories. We have Sahih. The first category is Sahih. The second category is Hasan. And the third category is Da'if. And Hadith that is Sahih, there are 5 conditions. I just say this for revision. Hopefully we can remember, inshallah. And this is important. And when we get hadith, study books of hadith, it is important for us to understand these terminologies. Because sometimes when you find the muhaddithin, at the end of the hadith he say, Hada Sahahu Ibn Hibban. He said this particular hadith is Sahih on the authority of Ibn Hibban. Some muhaddithin mentioned this hadith is Hasan, like what we have in the second hadith. Al-Imam Ibn Hajar mentioned the second hadith is Hasan on the authority of Al-Imam Tirmidhi. That's why he said Hassanahu at-Tirmidhi. Al-Imam Tirmidhi mentioned that this particular hadith is Hasan. Sometimes he mentioned Da'afahu Muslim, that this particular hadith is Da'if. Who said that it is Da'if? Imam Muslim, for example, or Imam Bukhari. So it is important to understand what is Sahih and what is Hasan and what is Da'if. So it is important for us to memorize 5 things. These are the conditions of hadith which is Sahih. That is why if you study Mustalah Hadith, if you study any books of Mustalah, whether you study Baykhuniyah or you study the books of Imam Ibn Hajar, Tadrib al-Rawi, books of Imam Nawawi, you will find that the first things the scholars of hadith speaks about the conditions of Sahih. So how many conditions we have? 5 conditions. Number 1, for hadith that is Sahih, all the narrators in the chain of narration must be trustworthy. Must be trustworthy. We have the term adil, that all of the rawi must be upright. Adil, meaning can be trusted. Not a fasid. Not a fasid. So meaning he must be adil. The meaning of adil, when we say this fulan bin fulan is adil, it means that this particular person has not committed any major sin. He has not committed any major sin. Major sin like stealing, zina, drinking liquor, blasphemy. All the sins there has a punishment, specific punishment in the Quran. Like blasphemy, gambling, drinking liquor. All these are basically major sin. So this particular person has not performed any major sin. Point number 1. Point number 2, he has not performed minor sin continuously. He does not perform minor sin continuously. If he performs any a minor sin, but on and off, sometimes he does, sometimes he does not do, still we say he's adil, no problem. But if every day he backbites, for example, backbiting, every day you hear him speaking about people and all the bad things about people, now this person he is not adil. He is a fasiq. The opposite of adil and he is fasiq. The fasiq and he is a person, either he is a person who performs major sin or he performs any minor sin continuously. So the scholars of hadith, if they find that this particular narrator is fasiq, straight away the hadith becomes da'if. If he narrates any the hadith, for example, he said, I heard any from Imam Malik, and for example, if a person say, I heard any from Imam Malik, from Zuhri, from Nafi', from Ibn Umar, that the Prophet ﷺ said this and this, but he is a fasiq. The scholars in hadith and he will categorize this hadith, this narration as da'if. Why? Because the one who narrates any this hadith cannot be trusted, because he is a fasiq. But there is a possibility that he is speaking the truth. Possible. There are some people and they are fasiq, but they speak the truth. Possible. But why any of the scholars of hadith do not accept this hadith? Or they say this category of hadith is da'if and so on. Why? Because to play safe. That if he is a fasiq, then it is better for us to play safe in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Because there is also a possibility that he is lying. Likewise, there is a possibility that he is speaking the truth. There is a possibility that he does not speak the truth. So what is the best? To them, we play safe and we regard this particular hadith as a weak hadith. So this is point number one, pertaining to the narrator. That the narrator must be adil, upright, trustworthy, can be trusted. A person who is in obedience to the obligation, obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, performing any of the sunnah. And you find people, for example, coming to the masjid and you do not know anything bad about them, and these are some of the characteristics of adala. Say this particular person is adil. This is point number one. Point number two is what they call it as adabt or dabit. That the narrator must be someone who is alert mentally and possess intelligence. The person must possess intelligence and alertness, meaning not forgetful. Because sometimes you can find a person who is trustworthy, upright, mashallah, wali min awliya illah. You know that he will not speak falsehood. But sometimes he forget. He always forget, for example. Or he make any mistakes. Now we say that this particular person, sometimes he is forgetful, sometimes he makes any mistakes, meaning there is a shortcoming in his memory and his intelligence. But he's an upright person, mashallah. So point number two, a person must be intelligent and must be, what you call it, not forgetful. This is the meaning of adabt. And scholars of hadith speaks about these conditions. If you read any books, any mustalah, there are many other things that they speak about pertaining to dabt. This is point number two. Point number three is that the hadith that is narrated must be free of any shortcomings. Must be free of any shortcomings. Meaning, the hadith must be muttasil, ittisalus sanad. That the narrator who narrates the hadith narrates that particular hadith all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From Fulan bin Fulan to from Fulan bin Fulan, from Fulan bin Fulan, from Fulan bin Fulan, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when you look at the chain of narration, there is a continuous chain. So this is point number three. Then the narration must be continuous. The chain of narration must be strong. And the scholars of hadith speaks about all the narrators and how they meet. For example, Imam Bukhari If you look at the conditions of Imam Bukhari, he makes sure that all the narrators meet each other. That this particular person says, Sami'atu min fulan bin fulan, or Haddathani fulan bin fulan, that this particular person mentioned to me. So it means that he met that person. So there must be a continuous any chain. The sanad must be continuous. This is point number 3. Point number 4, there must be not shortcoming. That's why I speak about the shortcoming. It's point number 4. I need follow the sequence. Point number 4, there must be no shortcomings in the sanad. Meaning sometimes when you look outwardly, the chain of narration is fixed. But actually one of the narrators is known that he has not met the other narrator. This one we call it al-illah. Al-illah. That is why Al-Imam Shafi'i, there is a particular hadith about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated that he kissed his wives before he performed any of the prayers. And this particular hadith is narrated by a particular tabi'in. Al-Imam Shafi'i mentioned that this particular tabi'in narrates from Zubair. And Zubair narrates from Aisha. So Al-Imam Shafi'i mentioned this particular Zubair is not Zubair ibn Awam, but this is another person that is not known. So outwardly the sanad is continuous, but Al-Imam Shafi'i mentioned there is a person that is not mentioned in the sanad to that detail. So he does not take that particular hadith. That is why in the Mazhab Al-Imam Shafi'i, we say that when a man and woman he touches, even husband and wife, the wudu becomes invalid. Even though you have hadith, for example, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam kissed his wives and he performs the prayers, Al-Imam Shafi'i he does not accept that particular hadith. He said that hadith is da'if. Because why? There is an illah in the hadith. Because the person who narrates from the Sahabi, there is a Sahabi that is not mentioned. There is a Sahabi that is not mentioned. So these are some of the things. It must be free from shortcomings. Point number 5, the hadith it must be free from shuzuz. Sometimes you have 2 hadith, and both of them, mashallah, the sanad, everything good. But the first hadith is the opposite of the second hadith. Contradiction. There is a contradiction between the first and the second. Now when you look and you find which is stronger in the sanad, you find out that the second hadith is stronger. The first hadith is weaker. So now when we say the first hadith is da'if. Why? Because it go against another hadith that is more sahih than the first hadith. This is as-salamatu min ash-shuzuz. So altogether we have 5. So this is just any crash course to speak about all this, and it requires one full lesson. I'm just what you call it, do a revision, since it's been some time we have not started this class. So just to take note, the 5 conditions, if you can memorize. Number 1, all the narrators he must be adil. Number 2, there must be dabt. Number 3, the sanad it must be muttasil, continuous. Number 4, there must be no illah, yani shortcoming in the sanad. Number 5, there must be no shadh. It must not contradict another hadith that is more sahih. So these are the conditions of hadith that is sahih. If a person asks you, then what is hadith which is hasan? You have hadith that is sahih and hadith which is hasan. Sometimes when you say this hadith is sahih, sometimes the muhaddithin they say this hadith is hasan. Ya salam, what is the difference between hadith that is sahih and hadith that is hasan? The only difference between hadith is sahih and hadith is hasan is only one thing. It's only in point number 2, that is a dabt. That the hadith of hasan, the hadith of hasan, the narrators in the hadith, in terms of the dabt is what we mentioned, and the intelligence and what you call it, the tendency to forget and all these things, is lesser than the degree of the Sahih. So the Muhaddithin, they say that this particular hadith is Hasan, even though there's only one narrator that is weak. One narrator, the whole hadith and it becomes hadith that is Hasan. Then what is hadith that is da'if? Hadith that is da'if, it does not fulfill any of the criteria any of the Sahih. For example, you have a chain of narration, everything is good, continuous, sanad, muttasil, there is no illa, no shaz, no nothing, but there is a particular narrator that is fasid. For example, as what we mentioned earlier, Fulan bin Fulan from Fulan bin Fulan from Fulan bin Fulan from Fulan bin Fulan. Then one any of these narrators, some any muhaddithin, and he mentioned that this person cannot be trusted because he committed zina and he was punished at one point of time, or this particular person was caught drinking liquor at one particular time. Then khalas, the whole hadith becomes da'if because they have one narrator. Sometimes because of two narrators, sometimes because of three narrators, sometimes the whole narrators are like that. Allahu A'lam. Sometimes there is a particular narrator, for example, is known for fabricating hadith. This is another thing. Then our scholars will say this is mawdu, because there is a narrator in the sanad that is famous for fabricating hadith. Most of the muhaddis will not accept this particular hadith, because there is a possibility that this particular person might be saying something else. So these are some of the things that we have to understand, especially for those who are learning hadith. So you have to understand the conditions of sihah. What is hadith that is sahih, what is hadith which is hasan, and what is hadith that is da'if. Pertaining to hadith that is sahih, there are not many. Not many, because most hadith that comes into us are da'if, for your information. Maybe some of you might be asking why. Most of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that came to us today, and we can speak about all books of hadith that came to us, most of the hadiths are da'if. When it comes into hadith that is sahih, there are not many. Hasan is more than sahih. Hadith hasan is more than sahih. Hadith da'if is more than sahih and hasan. What is the reason? I mentioned earlier that the muhaddithin, they are so concerned about the trustworthiness of the narrators and the conditions of the narrators, to such an extent because of this strictness, because of this to play safe, many of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ are categorized as da'if. So that is why the scholars of fiqh, the fuqaha, when they look at the hadith that is da'if, they look at the hadith of the da'if and study. They study and they look at the hadith which is da'if properly. And the later muhaddithin, they came and they look at the hadith that were da'if, and they found out that there are many hadiths that are categorized as da'if by this particular sheikh or this particular muhaddith, but actually it is not da'if, because there is a mistake. And there are differences pertaining to accepting narrators. And there are certain hadiths that is da'if, but it is backed by hadith that is sahih. So sometimes you find this term hasanun li ghayrihi, sahihun li ghayrihi. Initially it is da'if, but after that it becomes hasan. Initially it is da'if, but after that it becomes sahih. Because why? Because the meaning of the hadith coincide with the meaning which is in the sahih. And there are differences amongst the muhaddithin pertaining to the narrators, whether this particular narrator can be accepted or cannot be accepted. One particular muhaddith, like Imam Bukhari for example, mentioned that this narrator is da'if, but Imam Muslim, when he mentioned no, it's not da'if, it's trustworthy, adil. So sometimes you have differences between Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim pertaining to accepting a hadith that is sahih. You have differences between Imam Tirmidhi and Imam Abu Dawud pertaining to accepting any hadith, because every big muhaddithin, they have their own criteria in accepting the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we find that our ulama, they give a lot of importance and they treasure even the hadith that is da'if. And this is the thing also we must understand. When we say hadith that is da'if, it does not fulfill the criteria of hadith which is sahih. So we mentioned. But at the same time also we must understand there is a possibility that the hadith that is da'if is from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is why they study that hadith of the da'if and they put in conditions to practice the weak hadith. For example, scholars of hadith mention that if you have any weak hadith, it is permissible for you to practice the hadith in fada'il a'mal. You see, we have many hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in fada'il. For example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he speaks about kullu kardin jara fihi naf'un fahuwa riba. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned every loan that a person does, when there is a profit in the loan, it is riba. This hadith is da'if. But the scholars of faith accept this hadith. This is the thing. Why do they accept any of this particular hadith? Because why? The meaning coincides with the Quran. The meaning coincides with other hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do not be find it strange if you find hadith which is da'if in the books of fiqh. Usually our scholars mention hadith is da'if because it supports any hadith which is sahih. Likewise, if you read Bulughul Maram, Al-Imam Ibn Hajar quoted many hadiths that is da'if. You read Kitab Adabul Mufrad, Imam Bukhari. In Adabul Mufrad, there are many hadiths that is da'if. Likewise, if you read any other sunan, the sunan of Al-Imam Tirmidhi, for example, you will find hadith that is da'if. Why do they quote any hadith that is da'if? Because many of these hadiths, the meanings coincide with the hadith that is sahih, and it is accepted by the muhaddithin and accepted by the fuqaha. So weak hadith doesn't mean that our scholars throw away weak hadith. No such thing. But our scholars give a lot of importance to this hadith because there is a possibility that it comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all these things are based on ijtihad. Imam Bukhari does ijtihad, Imam Muslim does ijtihad, and sometimes our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith mentioned when a person does ijtihad, sometimes they make mistake. So there is a possibility that this particular hadith, even though it is da'if, but there is a possibility it comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is why in fada'il a'mal, it is permissible for us to practice even weak hadith. And likewise, weak hadith is narrated in the seerah, in marazi, and this is permissible. These are so many of the conditions of pertaining to the weak hadith. So, in general, hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are divided into the three categories that we mentioned. The hadith that is sahih, hasan, and da'if. And pertaining to hadith that is da'if, there are many names. If you study mustalah hadith, you will find there's hadith mu'dal, hadith mudraj. There are many terminologies pertaining to the weak hadith. Because our muhaddithin last time, they are so concerned about establishing the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they put in a lot of conditions that gives birth to many terminologies in the different types of the hadith that comes to us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with tawfiq and in hidayah. And I think the time of Isha has come, so we will stop here inshallah. Time of Isha, I think maybe another 2 minutes. Is it? 4 more minutes. MashaAllah, 4 more minutes. Now we go back to the hadith. So we have some time. 4 minutes. Why did I mention about this types of hadith? Because we were speaking about the hadith pertaining to bathing in Yawm al-Jum'ah, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he mentioned فَالْغُسْلُ أَفْضَلُ, that bathing in Jum'ah, it is highly emphasized in Islam. And this particular hadith is narrated by Al-Imam Tirmidhi. And he said that it is Hasan. So now when you see this particular hadith is Hasan, now you can understand. What is the meaning of Hasan? So the meaning of Hasan is that all the conditions of Sahih are present except in Dabt. The Dabt of any particular Rawi in the Sanad is not any the same as the narrators of the Sahih. That is the meaning of Hasan. So there is a huge similarity between Hasan and Da'if, except that Hadith Hasan it is a bit lower than the Sahih. Now inshallah we go on to the next Hadith. Maybe we just read today. The next week we can continue with the explanation. عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أتى أحدكم أهله ثم أراد أن يعود فليتوضأ بينهما وضوءا رواه مسلم زاد الحاكم فإنه أنشط للعون. Yani this particular hadith is related by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, and one of the Ansar, the Sahaba who lives in Medina, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, and he narrated in many hadith, this particular Sahabi. He said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said, إِذَا أَتَى أَحَدُكُمْ أَهْلَهُ, yani when a husband approaches the wife, meaning performing sexual intercourse. When there is a sexual intercourse, ثُمَّ أَرَادَ أَن يَعُودَ, yani after ejaculation, they want to return to sexual intercourse. Clear? Yani they perform any sexual intercourse, فَأَرَادَ أَن يَعُودَ, and he wants to return to the sexual intercourse again after ejaculation. Then the Prophet mentioned فَلْيَتَوَضَّأْ بَيْنَهُمَا وُضُوءًا, then he must perform the ablution before returning to the second, sexual intercourse. So here our scholars mention that it is a sunnah for a person who wants to return to perform the ablution. And Al-Imam Ibn Hajar mentioned Zad al-Hakim. Al-Imam Hakim has another narration, and there is a extension to it, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned فَإِنَّهُ أَنْشَطُ لِلْعَوْنِ. The reason why it is a sunnah for a person to perform wudu before sexual intercourse, because it will give the body nashat. Nashat meaning will give energy. And this is one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned on the wisdom why it is a sunnah for a person to perform the ablution. Inshallah ta'ala next week we will speak again about this hadith lengthily, because of time we stop here and we close with the dua. ربنا تقبل دعانا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا وآتنا الله يا كريم بفضل سبحان ربك بالعزة عما يصفون سلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين تقبل الله منكم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر.